Greetings and salutations, everybody. Wow, Jesus. I really need to get some sun. Anyways, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to another 80s Friday here for a film which my feelings about this one had definitely changed over the years. Not from disliking it to liking it or the other way around, just for another reason that I'll get to in a moment, which is for Cujo from 1983. Now, this one is based on a book by Stephen King, of course, and starring the amazing Dee Wallace, fresh off of E.T. the year before, and Howling, I believe, about a year before that. Anyways, a synopsis, in case anybody here somehow doesn't know what this is about after all these years, or just hasn't seen it in a long time. The synopsis is as follows. Cujo, a friendly Saint Bernard, contracts rabies and conducts a reign of terror on a small American town. Well, not the whole town, let's just say. But anyways, to open this up a little bit more, a mother and child are stuck in their car, which won't start on a very hot day while this rabid Saint Bernard is just stalking them outside. Sounds pretty basic, but it works so well because there's a lot that's kind of built up around this, kind of leading up to it, some of which I didn't even remember until a rewatch a few years back. But even so, I rewatched it again recently as well. On this most recent viewing, I was very aware of the character building leading up. Though not mentioned to my recollection in any video, but definitely in conversation I've had, I have issue when the story wastes time getting going. A few years back I was reading a book, which I'd enjoyed everything by this author, and I kept wondering when it would get going, when it would actually get started, as I felt like they were just leading me in, and then I realized it had started. They just wasted so much time getting things going that I'd lost interest. But in a surprising opposite to that one, we have an author like Stephen King. I think the comparison I use for his writing is for Salem's Lot. At one point, I think I read about 150 pages where, as far as the main bulk of this vampire story goes, nothing happened. It was just our lead getting to town, his life being set up there, getting to know some of the locals and so on, but he had written it in such a way that not only did it, not matter, if that makes any sense, it was actually really entertaining to see that portion of this, or to read that part of the story, to kind of see what this town is like before the fit hits a shan with all these vampires and everything. It kind of helped me connect with those characters where I was worried for their safety, horror, frights, have to worry about them. And in Cujo, see, I did bring it back around here, he does much of the same, at least from what I've seen on screen, as I haven't actually read the book yet. But this film spends a solid 45 to maybe even 60 minutes just kind of setting the stage, it feels like, filling us in on Dee Wallace's character's life, her family, her husband, her son, a man that she's having an affair with, where her life is headed, and as well as even stuff about her husband and some issues that he's having at work to kind of explain why he's not around at the time. Also, by the time we have this car trouble that they need help with, which is how they kind of come to this property where Cujo and their owner resides, we care a lot about what's going on with these characters, and we want everything to be okay with them. Now, leading up to this, we also have a bit about Cujo and their family, seeing how Cujo had contracted rabies, their slow decline and becoming rabid, becoming violent, along with the seeds kind of planted about the car trouble and reasons for some of Cujo's family to be away as well. So slowly, after all of this build-up, we get the real horror of this film, which is Dee Wallace's character and her son stuck in this car, which won't start, on Cujo's owner's property in the hot sun, with Cujo, a dog big enough to kill them both, and Rabbit on top of all of that, stalking them from outside. That's where that real horror is. We get Cujo attacking at this car, it's getting hotter, and heat stroke and dehydration becoming like a real concern and a real possibility, one that they can't simply just run away from due to Cujo. We have times when we think perhaps Cujo has kind of wandered off, gotten into some other sort of trouble or something, only to shockingly discover that he is still there, staring them down, waiting to pounce, completely focused on them. The heat stroke issue also becoming more and more apparent, especially for the little kid in this. But what really sells this film, or I should say, who really sells this film, is Dee Wallace. This is a criminally underrated performance of hers. One overlooked likely because of it being seen as more as horror rather than the dramatic aspects within this story. Being Stephen King as well. Horror in the 80s was great, but it was a different beast entirely compared to other films of the time, which would usually get all of the awards nods and everything. The side of her that we get to see, early on, her family interaction and the affair really open up her character and make her relatable and understandable, and you really connect with her and like her. So by the time she gets into this situation with her son, the worry sets in from the failed attempt to start the car, the passing of time, the rising heat, and these attacks by Cujo, while we're also seeing stuff happening with her son, who's just this little kid. And that worry and concern just intensifies as her character is breaking down from this situation. She's so stressed and terrified regarding herself, and then you throw in that parent side, the concern for her son, as she just simply melts away in this. Goes into an almost primal level of despair and terror and protection over her child. Now, I remember watching this decades ago and enjoying it, and I obviously still do, otherwise I wouldn't be making a video about it. But I noticed on these last two times how my feelings being a parent now have changed. I find this film to be more frightening than I did previously. And I actually had the pleasure of meeting Dee Wallace back in early November and was able to bring up this aspect of the film to her, which she agreed fully with. This film came out in '83 and her daughter was born in '88. So then when she looks back on this film, she said that she also had that very different feel regarding this, once she had become a parent. We had a really nice chat about this film and E.T. and of course and The Howling. And I gotta say, if you have the opportunity to go to a horror convention to meet her, have a chat. She is a real sweetheart, and her, along with some great conversation that I had with director Joe Lynch and actress, musician Alicia Witt, really made the convention trip an amazing one for me. The horror fam really is a good one. Everybody seems more open to chatting and spending time rather than those quicker interactions I get from other celebrities at non-horror conventions. But anyways, wrapping up this film in summary, King's writing, as usual, can somehow make the mundane day-to-day, getting to know the characters portions of the story seem anything but mundane. It's interesting, entertaining, and a great way to connect with these characters and set up that world. Screenwriters and directors don't always do a good job at translating his work for the screen, but in this case, in the case of this one, I feel that they really did do a great job. This situation, the rabid dog, stuck in a car, hot sun, sounds basic, but it works surprisingly well. And finally, Dee Wallace is the glue which holds this entire film together. As mentioned, it's a criminally underrated performance of hers, which I feel she never really got the full recognition that she deserved for this. Likely due to how many, but not all, but many horror films are kind of seen back in the 80s. But putting all that together made this very simple story about this rabid dog trapping people in a car with the heat blazing down on them more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my latest video here for Cujo from 1983, which at the time of this video is available on MGM+, Fubo, Philo, and paid rental. It's another one that I had scooped up on Blu-ray a little while back to keep in my collection. I really feel it's a classic worth hanging on to, and I don't want to be at the whims of streaming to have issues trying to find where I can watch it. I've watched it twice in the past 2 or 3 years, I would say, and each time I've enjoyed it quite a bit, as it's definitely aged very well. Definitely worth checking out, especially if you haven't seen it in years or decades. Just give this one another shot. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. I have a link coming up in a moment for another King video that I did for the film Christine a little while back, so be sure to check that one out. And as usual, if you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, and if not already subscribed, consider subscribing and hitting that little bell icon, or just checking back every now and then, whether you're going to get notifications or just to see what I've posted. I usually post every single Friday, every now and then on a Monday. I always try to keep it kind of 80s related, and once in a blue moon on a Wednesday, I'll throw something up there that's just a little bit different. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks again for coming by, and I will see you in the next one.